Welcome to Red Tiger Chronicles. This is Sifu Paul Mason, owner of Red Tiger Martial Arts in Cincinnati, Ohio, and this podcast is to help some of the most extraordinary martial artists that walk among us tell us their stories. Welcome to Red Tiger Chronicles. Today we have Jacob Mills, a movement specialist and strength coach and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. Just a little bit about Jacob. He graduated from UC in 2018 with a degree in health promotion and education. 2020, he was an elite certified personal trainer for the Tri-Health organization. In 2021, he earned certifications from the Institute of Human Performance in the fields of fitness instructor and exercise specialist. 2022, he became a personal trainer and earned a certification through the Institute of Human Performance as well. 2022, he also earned an MMA certification. 2023, he earned a corrective exercise specialization certification from NASM, as well as a rotational movement training specialist certification through the WEC method. He is a level 1 coach from Landmine University, and he served as a intern and personal trainer from 2017 to 2023 at Breakthrough Personal Training here in Cincinnati, Ohio. And in 2023, he started his own movement specialist business. He is the owner and operator of Intuitive Movement LLC, and he trains at Club MMA, a really good MMA gym on the west side, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under the Will Machado lineage, I believe. And he is the veteran of several competitions over the last 2.5, 3 years. I missed anything?
No, that was a mouthful. I apologize for all my certifications. No, that's all about right. Yeah, I got into it, and I'd like to nerd out a little bit. And
yeah, I respect that. So you went to, and this will come up, I guess, with the other questions, but yeah, you went to school and just hit it hard, like with all the post graduation certifications. And I think that's, that's key, especially if you're, an entrepreneur and you have a huge variety of specializations, I think, that you can help people with. Tell us how'd you get started in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
One of my first clients, Ethan Riley, was in MMA, and I was still finishing up my college degree at UC. And at the time, I didn't have any clients. So what I did is I set up a program, and I was working with his cousin at Kroger. And through a little bit of chit chat, his cousin finally told me, like, "Hey, man, like, I know a guy who needs to get strong," and he pointed me in Ethan's direction. So I trained Ethan for some years, and he always kind of nagged me a little bit, like, "Hey, dude, you should try this. You should try this." And I grew up watching like WWF. I feel like a lot of like 20 and 30-year-olds.
Yeah, right on.
So yeah, like I've always been interested in it, and it took me a really long time. I've always been like a really reserved person, so it takes me a long time to like get into things. And then finally, after Ethan started getting a couple fights in, and I asked him to show me some stuff, and we wrestled at the gym a little bit, and he was kicking my butt. I was like, I need to set my game up.
Yeah.
And that kind of sold me on joining the gym. So
cool.
I hopped into the gym, and I've just been going from there.
All right. So how long you been training?
Like 2.5, 3 years close.
Okay.
Like 6 months after I started, I broke my hand, so I had to take a couple months off. Mm-hmm. But even then, I was still just like in constant communication with everybody there. So, once you get started, it's like there's this constant input of media. So I'm just watching and reading and like looking at a bunch of stuff about it.
Cool.
Yeah.
For those of us who may not understand what a movement specialist does, how would you describe what you do for a living?
So I'm in that weird position where I have people, I'm in like what I would consider like a gray area where people will come in some sort of pain or dysfunction. And by no means am I a physical therapist. So like I don't even touch on that realm. Like I just help people lift weights, move better, get strong. But they'll come in these weird scenarios where they're like, well, I've gone to these doctors or I've done blah, 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 blah. And for whatever case that's out of my range, they couldn't help those people. So I kind of become like last ditch effort for a lot of them. They come in and my job is to simplify the idea of movement and put the personal in personal training. So I get the chance to know these people, know how they learn so I can coach them better, and then learn how they move and teach them how to move better through our process. A lot of it just becomes alignment, learning how to do things like stack your rib cage over top of your pelvis and get some spinal alignment, core engagement, things like that. And then to me, without talking for 10 years, the philosophy continues to grow. So once you have alignment, then you can understand rotation, and all of it from an anatomical standpoint is a neutral spine, internal, external rotation, muscle tension, muscle relationships, things like that. And I try to break it down to where people feel it.
Okay.
And I don't just talk about it all the time.
All right. So it sounds like it's a lot about restoring balance within the body.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good way to put it.
So who do you help? Who can you help?
I've always been told, and I feel like to a certain degree, it's truthful, that I should have a niche. I started to tighten my niche down through coincidence, I guess, of training at Club MMA combat athletes. And I help a lot of just like the corrective crowd. So like if people come in and they're like, hey, I'm a runner, my knee hurts when I do blah, 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 I'm able to run them through some sort of strength program, find that getting alignment back into the spine and understanding how they can load and land into the floor, something like that helps. But starting at Breakthrough under Josh Hostetler, when I transitioned from school into interning there, I wanted to just do strength and conditioning for a football team. And then I show up there and he's like, dude, we barely got any football players. What we do have is a whole class full of people that have bad backs and shoulders and necks and knees and hips. And we get them all to move really well. And they squat and they deadlift and they sled push and they push up and plank and do all this. So that's how I made the transition from traditional strength and conditioning to like a corrective exercise. And through the philosophy that I learned there and my 300 certifications, I kind of found that like the simplification of what I do allows me a greater variety of people that I can help. And I think that's kind of just where my jam has been.
So it's basically because your field or your method is more concept based, you can serve just about any population. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any population that you would stay away from?
Or? I think it's when I was a coach and I first started, I had younger kids, and kids are hard to coach when it's not sport related. And a lot of the concepts that I talk about, you have to be really introspective and be able to like look into how you move. And that's, you take a 10-year-old dude and you're like, all right, dude, I'm going to teach you a squat pattern. And they're like, I'd much rather just run around and kick a ball. So like I did well with the kids, but it wasn't as fun as I would like it to be. Whereas like if I was a Kung Fu instructor and I had a bunch of kids, I'd be like, all right, dude, we're going to learn how to punch and kick today. Yeah. And I think that draws their attention a little bit more.
Yeah. I could feel you. Yeah. You reminded me of that. There was a video going around a while back of like the Ultimate Warrior. And you mentioned you watched WWE, WWF, yeah. The Ultimate Warrior, like in just regular civilian life, trying to help these kids work out. And they're just totally blowing it and running off and like puking, and he's cussing at him and stuff. So when you mentioned that, it kind of made me think of that, but hopefully.
Yeah, no, that's exactly, I know what video you're talking about. Yeah. It's hysterical.
Yeah. So you kind of touched on it before. Can you explain what is the difference between what you do, personal training, physical therapy, or functional pattern training, or maybe other modalities that are popular today?
Yeah, sure. So typically with a physical therapist, they'll go through a ton more schooling than what I did. And there's clinicals and they learn they're a doctor. That's just what it is. They're a doctor. So they're able to diagnose and do those things. Whereas like I look at stuff and I'm like, okay, cool. I can't tell you exactly what's wrong, but I can tell you what I see that's wrong. And we base our field off of that. And it's like, well, if you're in a squat or a lunge and your hip is shifting, maybe we need to work on something glute related, or maybe your pelvis is twisted because your rib cage is twisted, and learning how to find alignment through there. I'm in that gray area because a lot of times like people think of fixing a problem through physical therapy, which it happens all the time. Like I work closely with a lot of physical therapists that are fantastic. But I'm in that transition spot where it's like, okay, let's say somebody goes and has ACL surgery and they're like, okay, cool. I need to get back into sport. I finished physical therapy, but there's still this giant gap between an athlete hopping back on the field and just finishing physical therapy.
Right.
And then that's where like I would come in and it's like, okay, cool. Let me help you get back into the weight room. So you don't end up with this massive hole that you're kind of in between physical therapy and actual sport of play.
Okay.
And that's where like, all right, let's keep restoring your squat. Let's keep restoring your lunge, your single leg work, your stability, posture, rotation, things like that. And I guess in terms of other modalities, it's everybody has their focus. And my game is to get what I've learned from Josh, and it has benefited me the most, is to find similarities between the two, or between like whatever list I'm looking at. So I get really good at coaching that style, and then I take the little things that I think are most important, and then I bring it back to myself.
Okay.
And I'll tweak it from there, and then I call it guinea pigging, but I guinea pig my clients and I see how it goes, and it runs from there.
Yeah, I guinea pig my students all the time, and if it works, we stick with it, we train it, and if it doesn't, then we kind of throw it out the door.
Yeah.
I did want to talk about the fact that I am a client, a customer of Jacob, and he helps me out with a debilitating hip issue that I have started experiencing within the past year or so. And we also train some Qigong together. And I've noticed a lot of similarities between Qigong concepts or traditional Chinese martial art concepts and some of the exercises or some of the intent that we focus on doing the exercises for my hip. And I just want to find out, like, what is the connection between your methods and maybe some Eastern philosophy or Eastern way of approaching healing and movement.
Yeah. A lot of what I do is I focus on tension, and most people would consider just like a isometric contraction of the muscle, which is, for the most part, there's concentric, eccentric, and then isometric. So concentric is when the muscle shortens and it moves between two joints. Eccentric is when it lengthens, and then isometric is where it doesn't move at all. So if you just squeeze your hand and flex your bicep, that's an isometric contraction. And that's like the anatomy terms. But what I like to do is find how that will kind of follow like a fascial line. Thomas Myers in Anatomy Trains talks a lot about like fascial linings, but like Qi kind of follows those fascial linings as you get connections between like the pinky side of the palm and the armpit, and understanding the core and how the relationship with the core and how the hips move. But finding how like you can create that tension, especially as I've made the transition into doing some of the Qigong stuff with you, and in grappling, I see it a lot, is like there's certain times where you have to squeeze or understand how to grab or maneuver or leverage or push or pull. And I feel like in traditional strength and conditioning, you don't get a lot of that. It's like you get your long grindy reps, or you might get like super fast explosive ones, or some isometrics. But there's something about like long duration, like you do a 5-minute round in jiu-jitsu and you're like, dude, my forearms are toast. So my game is to, like, instead of just squeezing with your hands, you learn how to squeeze through your hand and then pull into your lat. And then your lat, you find that connection through your serratus and then your internal, external obliques, how your core starts to kick in, and then how your hip. So a lot of it's like, we find how to use the body as a whole, similar to some of the methods that we do through Qigong is like you move from your core. So then once you find your center line, then you understand how to move from your center line, which is way more powerful than just trying to move with your arm.
Indeed, indeed. So how does your vocation help you with your martial art, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and or vice versa? Has your practice of martial arts kind of broadened your perspective on the movement field?
Oh, that's a really good one. I think I've been able to bring or learn more about myself and others through jiu-jitsu than I have strength and conditioning, or even just the movement field, because a lot of it's like there's other trainers that do, or just it's strong people in general that do jiu-jitsu. So there's guys that I train with that like they'll bench like 350, 500 pounds and they'll just throw me off of them. Or there's like these people who run marathons and their cardio's out the window, and it's absurd. Whereas like when I started training, I was like, yeah, I'm in relatively good shape. Like I do all these kettlebell complexes. I check my heart rate. I do blah, blah, blah. And then there's like nuances where you're on your back and somebody's chest is on your face. And you're like, dude, I can't breathe. Like I have to learn how to maneuver my body a little bit more. So there's this gray area of movement because in a lot of lifting, like a barbell, if I give someone a barbell, it's typically a fixed path. Your feet are in a fixed position. Your spine is in a fixed position, and we have you move within that fixed path. So my game that I'm starting to find from jiu-jitsu is that not everything's going to be perfect, and learning how to be strong in imperfection helps you even more in a quote unquote perfect spot. So finding those little nuances in between movements has been just like mind blowing.
That's awesome. So you've talked to me a little bit about growing up, and you can mention that too if you want. Like, what was your childhood like? If you don't want to, you don't have to. But I wanted to ask, when you were growing up, is this where you thought you would be doing something like this to help other people, or did you picture yourself doing something way different? And would you have any advice for young people considering this field, or maybe young people that don't know what they want to do? But
this is gonna be a long one.
It's fine. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, I grew up in East Price Hill, so it was just like kind of slummy-esque area. I joke around, but like I just grew up like poor white trash. And as a kid, I actually wanted to be a psychologist.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, cool. Like this is a thing that I can get into. I had no idea about anything. Like neither of my parents graduated high school. So for me to graduate high school, I was like, hell yeah, like, let's go. I'm in it. And then I didn't think about college until the end of my junior year of high school. And then I was like, what's next? Like, what do I do? And of course, like my dad, who didn't even get to high school, was like, God, I don't know, dude. Like, go to college, I guess. And I was like, yeah, I mean, we're poor. Like me and my dad, he couldn't work. So I think he probably brought in like $900 from Social Security. So like we lived on $900 a month.
Wow.
So I found out through Cincinnati Public Schools, there's a grant called the CPG grant. And if you maintain a 2.0 GPA or higher, and you go to a Cincinnati public school for 4 years, you qualify to go to UC for free. And I was like, holy shit, like this can't be real. You have to qualify for FAFSA as well, which we super qualified. So I filled it out and I went, and I still at that time, I didn't know anything. And I had a guidance counselor, Mr. Wilkes, in high school, who told me about kinesiology. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I'll look into that, but I have no idea what the hell it is. And then when I got into college, I was like fresh out of, I had shoulder surgery my junior year of high school. I ended up quitting football my senior year, but through physical therapy, I was like, maybe I can be a physical therapist. But I've always loved lifting weights. And I didn't know that like we were poor, like gyms weren't a thing. Like you just run around outside and play with your brother's weights or something. So I didn't know coaching people how to work out. I didn't think that was a thing. I was like, all right, I guess. So in my mind, I was like, okay, physical therapy seems pretty cool. And then I saw the amount of schooling and I was like, damn, dude, like I don't even want to be in college in general.
Yeah.
Because nobody I knew, like none of my best friends went, and not knocking them, like they have fabulous careers now, but I'm like, damn, I'm the only one to go. Like I'm by myself. Like I'm just some poor kid from East Price Hill. I didn't think much of it. I started getting into it. And then I had another guidance counselor and she's like, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I just want to help people. And I don't know how to help people with like what I'm aiming at. Cause like I want to do physical therapy. I want to do psychology. I want to do all this stuff, but I just care about people. Like it's all of my relationships have been built off of interpersonal stuff. And it's like learning about someone and watching them grow has always been like a super cool thing. Like watching you like, oh man, my hip felt pretty good today. Or like felt really good after the session, or like watching my athletes win fights, or like watching my 75-year-old client come in like, dude, I did yard work yesterday and like, it didn't hurt my back. I'm like, fucking hell yeah, dude, let's go. Cause it's little stuff like that. But yeah, I talked to her about it and she pointed me in the direction of health promotion education. They have two different routes. There's a community and public health, which is where you would do like a certified health education specialist. You do stuff like help communities. You develop plans like behavior change models and stuff like that. And there's exercise and fitness. And I was going to graduate a year late anyways. So I went ahead and just did both because I've always wanted backup plans. But exercise and fitness was my thing. I was like, dude, I'm working in a gym. And that's just kind of how I fell into it. And luckily, like I met Josh because I worked part-time at another gym on the west side, and their personal trainers were terrible. And they just treated clients like they would just like shame clients.
Oh my goodness.
Based on, like ladies would walk in and they'd look them up and down and be like, well, you're kind of chubby, so you need to work on this. I'm like, dude, you're a fucking terrible person. And this is why people think personal training is bad, because of people like you. So I kind of learned what not to do because of them. And then I met Josh by some random encounter. And it was 3 years before I graduated. And I was like, hey, dude, I need an internship to graduate. Can I intern at your gym? And he's like, I guess. Yeah. And 3 years later, I showed up. It was the end of November, and I was like, hey, is that offer still good? And he's like, aren't you the dude from the deli at Kroger? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, all right, cool. And then I interned through May, and then like I worked part-time for him. A lot of it was just like I just watched him coach. And then I got to be around a good coach, and he taught me a shit ton. And after that, I started picking up certifications and learning from other people. We had a Kim Blanton, who's a really good kettlebell coach, who showed me a ton of stuff. And I just started to morph into my own trainer and move in from there. But I think the other half of that was advice to people who want to get into the field.
Yeah.
Man, I talked so long, I forgot.
That's fine. You're good.
It's hard, and that's okay. I want people to know that. It's super hard to get clients. Like I've been training for years now, and it wasn't until I made my own thing and I got myself in front of people, because I've always been pretty introverted. Like I'll spend my energy helping people, but like I recharge when I'm like at home with my wife and I'm like just chilling with our cat. But yeah, it's tough, dude. It's really hard. So I would say find a coach, find somebody that because a certification is cool, but I was blessed in a sense where like I had a coach before I had all these major certs.
Right.
So I learned how to learn. And then when you get that foundation and then you go look into a cert, like I'll read through stuff like NASM's corrective exercise specialist. Like I look at something like that and it's like, okay, well, I've already been dealing with people and I've seen coaches deal with people. Like I know what this looks like outside of the screen or outside of the book because I've dealt with it hands on. So I would for sure say find a coach that will teach you, and then have just that base of foundation. And don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Say yes to 99% of anything. Any person that you can train, any person that you can train, and just be around them. And it like a huge mixture. Like don't even find a niche when you're first getting into it. Just everybody. And it gives you a chance to, one, understand people, to understand that like how people learn. And it gives you more confidence because you're like, okay, like, yeah, I trained so and so who had his foot blown off and he only had one leg. Or I've trained a 7-year-old who did blah, blah, or I've trained like this elite level MMA athlete. It's like, it gives you an opportunity. And then from there, like once you start to get more reps in, then from there you can like pull it down into your niche. But yeah, just find a coach, be around people, and know that it's going to be hard, and that's okay.
All right. Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah. So I guess shout out to Josh Hostetler.
Yeah, Josh is the man.
Anchor Wellness, Cincinnati, Ohio.
Yeah.
Putting you on that path.
Yeah, for sure.
So what's the best way for people to find you if they want to get, their movement patterns corrected and rehabilitate, conditions or injuries and stuff? How do people find you? What's the best way?
The best way right now is via Instagram or Gmail, which is Intuitive Movement LLC. On Instagram, it's just at Intuitive Movement LLC, and then my my Gmail is Intuitive Movement LLC at gmail.com. I try to get back relatively quick, but I've been picking up a lot of clients, so I've been busy.
All right. Sounds good. So that wraps it up for today. Thanks for coming on the program, and we'll go over some application here in a moment for we usually call it the Marshall Minute, but it might be some type of exercise that you teach us. What can you teach us in 60 seconds or less? And we can show that to the people before they listen. So we'll wrap this up and get to that portion here momentarily.